No hay ningún Quirón trabajando aquí, ningún fin que no lo puedan sacar ustedes. Si de ahorita se comprometen de que mañana van a dar una cuadrilla, no la van a soltar hasta que no la saquen.
The legacy of Cesar Chavez. Cesar Chavez was the most important Latino in the history of the United States. He was the incubator for political actions by people outside of the farm workers. After experiencing the unjustified labor conditions firsthand, Chavez became the first to build a union for farm workers. He united the nation's poorest workers and fought for their rights using nonviolent means of retaliation, such as organized strikes and boycotts that caught the attention of people worldwide. In the faces of those who doubted his effectiveness as a leader, Chavez's efforts left the world with a rare and invaluable legacy that still resonates today. Cesar Chavez was born in Yuma, Arizona in 1927, the grandson of Mexican immigrants. Chavez's father, a farmer named Librado, taught him the value of hard work. His mother, Juana, a deeply religious and compassionate woman, taught him the importance of love and caring for the less fortunate. His family moved to the San Joaquin Valley, where they joined the migrant farm workers. Chavez had just completed the 8th grade when he dropped out of school to work with his family in the fields. As Chavez continued to grow up in this environment, he became exposed to the hard conditions that the farm workers endured. This included wretched migrant camps, corrupt labor contractors, meager wages for the backbreaking work, and bitter racism. His strong belief that farm workers deserved a better life that had developed as a result of how he was brought up influenced him to work to gain the rights for farm workers and turned him into the great leader that he is known as today. He married Helen Fabela Chavez, a woman who supported his efforts to work towards changing the social injustices. In 1952, the lead organizer of community service organization named Fred Ross learned of Chavez. Ross trained Chavez first as a CSO leader, next as one of the CSO's organizers, then a statewide director. Chavez coordinated voter registration drives and conducted campaigns that fought against racial and economic discrimination. It was during this time in the CSO that Chavez became affiliated with Dolores Huerta and Gilbert Padilla, CSO activists who eventually joined forces with Chavez to form the UFW Union. In 1962, Chavez moved to Delano, California, after he resigned from his position at the CSO when it wasn't quite fulfilling his dream. That small farm town would later become the epicenter of a groundbreaking movement for the rights of migrant farm workers, led by Cesar Chavez. The majority of Cesar Chavez's work took place in Delano, California, after he and his family had moved there. Delano is located in the San Joaquin Valley and was primarily farmland. The area was home to more than 70,000 immigrants who worked on the farms. After the Mexican Revolution that occurred in 1910, several Mexicans fled their country north into the U.S. in hopes of starting a new life. Along with the incoming migrants came an increase in agricultural laborers. The rising numbers of immigrants grew with the demand for agricultural workers. A program arose called the Bracero Program, which offered Mexican farm workers a legally binding work contract. This program contributed even more to the growing numbers of laborers. A great number of these workers suffered abuses of their labor rights and racial discrimination. Because of the fact that the migrant farm workers arrived impoverished and did not receive a high paycheck, the majority of them lived in filth in tents and shanty towns along the irrigation ditches. In 1965, a small group of Filipino farm workers that were allied with the American Federation of Labor's Struggling Agricultural Workers Organizing Committee were on strike when the Delano grape growers cut the pay rates of workers during the harvest. Chavez was able to unite the farm workers from his union in Delano to join the strike. The two groups merged to form the first union for farm workers, the United Farm Workers Union. The union used strikes to disrupt the harvest and pressure growers into making changes. Knowing that the strikers could easily be replaced with new immigrants under the Bracero Program, Chavez knew he had to win the support of the public by asking them to boycott grapes, wine, and lettuce until the growers agreed to sign a contract. At the height of the boycott, there were more than 13 million Americans in support. The members of the UFW faced violence from the growers. In the midst of it all, Chavez remained others of their motto that would one day be used in presidential campaign. Sí se puede. Nonetheless, Chavez continued his nonviolent means of retaliation to attract the media's attention, such as marches, civil disobedience, and prayer vigils. Cesar Chavez became the most famous Mexican American and was put on the cover of Time magazine in 1969. Chavez knew that maintaining the nonviolent approach was key to the Union's success. When he noticed that the Union members might respond to the violence with violence, Chavez went on a hunger strike, putting his health at risk for the sake of peace amongst his Union members. Chavez's fast quickly drew the attention of the media, which drew sympathy for the strike and boycott. Perhaps one of the most important people who sympathized was Senator Robert F. Kennedy, who became a close supporter of the UFW. To return the favor, when Kennedy announced he was running for president, the UFW endorsed him, registered Mexican voters, and helped him to secure his victory in the California Democratic primary. The day of his victory, he was assassinated. By the late 1970s, the UFW had about 50,000 members. They accomplished to establish contracts with the majority of the grape and lettuce growers. Growers were required to stop the spraying of their fields with pesticides that risked the workers' health. Pay and other working conditions drastically improved. Medical insurance became available for migrant workers. They were also eligible for unemployment insurance and employer-paid pensions. Even the working conditions for non-union workers had been considerably improved. By 1982, after California's newly elected Republican governor failed to implement the new labor laws, it became easier for the growers to decertify the union and harder for the union to win elections. The membership declined from 50,000 to just a few thousand by the time of Chavez's death. Cesar Chavez passed away in his sleep on April 23, 1993. More than 50,000 people attended his funeral. Since his death, Chavez had become an American icon. Many cities have named parks, schools, and streets after him. In 1994, Chavez was posthumously awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the nation's highest civilian award, by President Bill Clinton. His birthday, March 31st, is now a state holiday, Cesar Chavez Day in California, Texas, and Colorado. President Barack Obama, who adopted the UFW slogan, "Yes, we can," for his presidential campaign, has proclaimed March 31st, 2014 as National Cesar Chavez Day. Even though the Union is not the size that it once was, the tactics used by the UFW helped to inspire other activist groups not formally affiliated with Chavez's labor movement. Marshall Gans, a former UFW organizer who spent over a decade and a half working with Chavez, stated in an interview with MSNBC, "The farm workers movement was a part of a much broader movement, and that movement was a crucible for generating a whole generation of organizers and activists, not by any means limited to the Latino world. For years in California, if you asked anyone where they got their start, they'd say in a boycott or on the picket line." Chavez was a leader, in addition to being a great humanitarian who fought for the rights of the nation's poorest workers and inspired millions of Americans to seek social justice and civil rights for the poor and disenfranchised. He was a common man with an uncommon vision for humankind. His legacy remains relevant and inspiring today. Cesar Chavez is the most important Latino in the history of the United States.